Welcome back, guys. These are the 9 shaman buffs that you need to know about. They just happened with the new the fixes that just came on Tuesday. We're gonna go over them. Pretty exciting. The first one, Wind Fury weapon damage was increased by 240%. It was, I don't know, 11% of your agility, and now it's 24% of it. Considerable increase. If you pair that with Forceful Winds, I've gotten it up to 1200 damage each, if you can get up to 5 times or whatnot. Very good for PvE, definitely for AoE damage, coupling with Crash Lightning. But PvP wise, it's not as good for bursting or whatnot, but it's definitely a nice buff to have. The next one, Healing Surge. Healing has been increased by 50%. They did something with Enhancement where they knocked down all the damage of our spells by a lot, and they removed this on Healing Surge. So now at least the heal is 50% stronger, which is totally good for survivability and PvP and such. And Healing Surge costs a lot anyway, mana-wise, and I think you can only get like 4 off before you're out of mana. So getting a buff is an increase to it's good, so it doesn't drain it. It heals for more, and we're not trying to spam so many for to heal ourselves. Next one, Maelstrom weapon spending abilities have had their damage or healing increased by 30%. This is amazing, just amazing. It means Healing Surge was basically, that's the only time I really try to use it is when you have a 5-stacker Maelstrom weapon. So that again increases Healing Surge by 30%. On top of its 50%. I've healed from at least from half to full if I've crit with it. At least 8k, 10k, something along those lines. Which also means it increases their damage output of Maelstrom spending abilities like Lightning Bolt, Chain Lightning, Elemental Blast, and also Chain Heal, of course. So it's like 30% buff increase to Lightning Bolt and such, those things too. Lightning Bolt hits a little bit stronger and such, so it's a great buff there. Feral Spirits pet damage has been increased by 270%. It means the damage they deal when they're biting and fighting your opponent, that damage is increased by 270%. It was minuscule. It was basically you call the wolves out just for the Maelstrom, generation, and possibly if you're running Elemental Spirits for the buffs, either you got a Lightning, Ice, or Fire Wolf, and those buffs that came with those 3. But now at least they do considerable amount of damage. They crit each for like 400 a bite, which is pretty good. It's pretty good. It's a good for, especially like in PvP, you could use them for Maelstrom generation for heals while they're doing, at least they're still doing damage too. Plus you get the buff if you can get close to your target and use, Parker Wind Fury or Storm Strike and whatever. The next one, it's also still good in PvE too, for those same reasons. Extra damage is extra damage. Nothing wrong with that. Next one, Hot Hand additionally resets the cooldown of Lava Lash when it activates. To me, that's a buff. Before it would activate and it still had like a 2 second or so left. It would still do that cooldown on it, which kind of made it. If it only lasts for 8 seconds, it uses up 25% of it just getting to that first button push. So at least, and even then I could only get 3 off depending on haste, but maybe I think you can almost get 4 off now using if Hot Hand procs. So that's definitely a buff. One extra hit of Lava Lash at 100% damage is definitely, I'll take it. That is definitely a good buff. Ice Strike damage has been increased by 75%. That's good. It was about as strong as, I don't know. It was about 65% of spell or agility or spell damage or spell power or power attack, whatever you want to call it. But increased by 75%. It's kind of on board in the 1400 range, almost the same damage, like a little under an Elemental Blast or 2 times the damage of a Lightning Bolt. That's definitely a buff. I've gotten a hit for 4,000 crit, but has a really long cooldown. If you decide to run Ice Strike in PvE, it's really hard to make good use of it in the rotation. you're mostly hitting storm strikes. It does hit harder than a lava lash without hot hand, or even with hot hand sometimes. So you could prioritize that over lava lash for the damage, but has a long cooldown just like lava lash. And in particular, it's about trying to use it to reset cooldowns of your shock spells. And I've never, even trying against the dummies and stuff, I've never found a time to where something didn't proc where I had a free opening to Ice Strike to try to reset cooldowns or even use it in that matter. But it's nice to have something on that whole row of Hot Hand, Storm Flurry, and Ice Strike. This probably has the most damage increase because Hot Hand hardly procs, but when it does, it's cool. Storm Flurry, it's physical damage, so it's, you know, even PvP, it's affected by armor, and so Ice Strike is good, but hard to implement, especially if it doesn't crit. Now the next one, but it's a damage increase, so next one is Lashing Flames duration has been increased to 20 seconds, was 12. That's perfect because I guess, well, if Flame Shock lasts 18 seconds or it's 24 or one of the two, I forget, there was 24 before and now it's 18. If it only lasted 12 seconds, it means, you know, you'd have to try to throw another Lava Lash in there to try to, you know, before Flame Shock dies off, you have to do another Lava Lash for the last 6 seconds to do another 2 ticks of the 100% damage. But now, since it's extended, you don't, and that is a buff in a way that you don't have to try to prioritize that for that buff to fall. It might fall off and you're gonna have to Lava Lash, but there might have been a better button to push, like use a Maelstrom weapon ability, a Storm Strike definitely, or a Hailstorm whatnot, proc or something like that. So it's definitely that. Now that it has an increased duration, it helps you prioritize something better than having to do another Lava Lash. Because me personally, Lava Lash doesn't do that good of damage. It isn't my go-to button. The next buff was Elemental Blast. Damage increased by 25%. This is huge. On top of the Maelstrom weapon increase by 30%, I've hit Elemental Blast for 10k, 8k. It does a considerable amount of damage. Really good for PvP, for bursting at that moment. If instead of using your Maelstrom weapon stacks for damage instead of healing. In PvE wise though, it can be good for single target, possibly. Still better to run Lashing Flames or whatnot. It's pretty much up to you depending on what you're running, but it's hard to fit in the rotation, especially when there's a lot of AoEing and such, and there's always better buttons to push, like Storm Strike, or possibly if you're running Hot Hand. But it is good, and we'll take that damage increase, why not? And the last one is Fire Nova, and the damage has been increased by 75%. Now I've tried running around Fire Nova. Before it was barely doing 300 damage, it wasn't really that good, but now it's up to about 500 damage or so at my current level, non-crit. And the most I can actually get from, without running Ice Strike, mind you, I could get three Flame Shocks on 3 targets and hit a Fire Nova. And I think the cap is 8 mobs per Flame Shock. So if you have 3 out there, it'll hit all of them 3 times. And it does a pretty good amount of damage if you can keep it up. The rotation to try to go from one to the other takes a little bit of skill to, especially if you're running, you know, Lashing Flames at the same time, where you have to like Flame Shock, Lava Lash, tab, do some stuff right when Flame Shock comes up, do it again. You can try to wait for another Lava Lash to come up to try to put Lashing Flames on the second target too, but by that time there's a chance that the first Flame Shock will fall off. So a lot of times I just only get Lashing Flames on the first target, Flame Shock the second target, then Flame Shock the third target and Lava Lash that one, and then I'll Fire Nova. And if you're running those things, Flame Shock's tick damage, and the Fire Nova does a considerable amount of damage. It does a lot of ticking, but it's good to have a 75% increase. Like I said, I've had it crit for 1200 or so, which is really good, but the choice is now, is it better over Hailstorm? And that's really up to play style. Hailstorm probably still reigns because it doesn't really mess with the rotation so much. You can still stay on the initial target until it's dead and still AoE without having to switch targets. Whereas if you're using Fire Nova, you kind of have to tap around, and you're not necessarily burning one target, and that kind of splash damage is just being spread, something like Chain Lightnings and Hailstorm does for you, or even Crash Lightning. So, but it's good to have a buff, and it's good to try to use it and be a little bit different. Now, there was a couple nerfs, and we're going to go through it right now. The first nerf is the Forceful Winds Wind Fury damage bonus per stack was reduced down to 35%. It used to be 50%. On the beta, it was doing just really good damage with, coupled with Doom Winds. So they reduced Forceful Winds down. And the other nerf was to Hailstorm. It was 35% per stack of Maelstrom weapon. Now it's only 15%. So it was almost gutted by over half. Still did considerable damage. I was hitting, I could hit Frost Shocks for 5k or so on the dummies, and now it's more like 3 or so, sometimes 2, depending on your mastery. But we'll still take it. It kind of helps it come in line with Fire Nova a bit, but still on that row with Elemental, Firestorm and Fire Nova there, just to not have to have so much of a change in rotation, you could still run Hailstorm. So those are the buffs that have just come out. Go out, go kick some butt, use up, enjoy all the buffs while they last for now, because it'll feel different once Shadowland drops in a few days. But let me know down in the comments what you think about all these buffs and the few nerfs. Let me know if you've seen any changes in damage and if how you like it or not. If you haven't already, subscribe to the channel. Hit this video with a like. Would appreciate you. I'll see you in the next one.